upset some people with my opening statement. But I was at Barclays Center for the Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia fight, and watching the fight live, my scorecard read it 114, a draw. Now, hear me out. This is the kind of fight that reminds me of Joe Calzaghe versus Bernard Hopkins fight from some years ago, when the media talked about how they scored that fight. 90% of the media on press row scored the fight the same. They had it 113 for Hopkins. And what I mean by this reminding me of that fight is the fight that you see on TV is not the same fight that you see live. So 90% of press row scored at 113 for Hopkins, and when they got home and watched it on TV, quite a few scored the fight for Calzaghe by a couple of points. So that's like a 3 or 4 point swing when you do that. So the question is, how can you watch something live and then go home and score it 3 points the other way, watching the same fight on television? The answer is, when you, for certain fights, often, okay, not all of them, but for certain fights, watching a fight live versus television can be totally different at times, and this was that kind of fight. Now, most of the media I sat near, they had varying scores. Some had Garcia Thurman scored a draw. Some had it 1 or 2 points for Garcia. Some had it 1 or 2 points for Thurman. And I saw some who had it as much as 4 points, like 116, 112 for Thurman. So each person may go back home and say, okay, now I have it differently when watching the fight on the tube. And it works like that with some fights. The television fight is different from what you see live. This was one of those types of fights. When you look at Greg Leone at BoxingTalk.com, he had it 115, 113 for Danny Swift Garcia. True School Sports had it for Garcia. Scott Schaefer had it 115, 113 for Garcia. Bill Collegero, Billy C. up there in New York, he had it a draw. Dax Khan had it 115, 113 for Keith, one-time Thurman. He's a guy whose opinion I respect. There was another guy who had it 115, 113 for Thurman from BoxingNews24.com. Sorry, I forgot your name, bro. I probably should have written it down or sent a text to myself or something. My bad. And then there's another guy who was in the auxiliary press row who had it a draw. I didn't bother asking him his name, but I just kind of told myself to remember that. Boxers have chimed in. Errol Spence Jr. thought it was an extremely close fight. He said Thurman got hurt to the body by body shots from Danny Garcia, and it caused him to run in the championship rounds. I know that Garcia landed some body shots. I'm not sure they hurt him that much, but Errol Spence was a little closer to the action than I was. And so, if you watch the fight live, you saw Danny Garcia catching a lot of Thurman's shots. While on television, they may have appeared to be punches that connected. Which brings me to, there's this guy who does these slow motion videos on YouTube. I don't know his name. He does a good job giving you just a new perspective on fights. For example, he slowed down the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight and showed you how punches that Manny landed weren't scored by the officials or the fans. Then he showed you that punches that Floyd allegedly landed were blocked, or Manny rolled with them. And it really gave you cause to watch that fight again. Ironically, and I don't know if this is the same guy or not. If so, he did the opposite for Manny in his videos for Pacquiao Bradley 1. I'm not sure if it's the same guy. Probably not. But the video was compelling. The video illustrated how Bradley rolled with a lot of punches and caught some of the punches with his glove or his shoulder. But at normal speed, it appeared as if Bradley was hurt by the punches that Manny was landing. So I'm not sure if this guy, or if they're two different guys, I'm not sure either one would do a slow-mo video on this fight for educational purposes. I guess it depends on if they thought it was a close fight, or if they thought the other guy won, in this case Garcia. Then maybe they would show you exactly what landed and what didn't. But that's not what this video is about. It's not about debating who won and lost. This video is more about a great opportunity that both fighters let slip away. I mean, this fight was a disappointment. It was. We're talking about a unification. We're talking about two undefeated guys. And don't get me wrong, the fight started off well. And we thought we were headed for something big. And so I got some texts during the fight from friends watching and saying that Mauro Ranallo and Ray Leonard were just awful. And while I expected it from Ranallo, and listen, to each his own, I personally don't like him. I expected it from him, but from what I heard, Leonard kind of bit his tongue multiple times when the fight was compared to Leonard versus Hearns 1. And I guess Ray didn't want his paycheck held, so he chilled and kept his mouth shut. As far as Ranallo, it was another case of if Ranallo was a radio broadcast, if this was a radio broadcast and Ronaldo called the fight, he made the action sound like this fight was similar to Castillo Corrales 1. And this just wasn't that fight. I mean, he has these well-rehearsed analogies that he finds a point in a fight, each fight to say, and he gets a chuckle from Bernstein and whoever else is on there, but you can't force the action. I mean, big shot by this guy, and it's just a regular punch. You understand what I'm saying? It's not, and I hate using this word, it's not organic. Don't make it more than what it is. And this is pretty much what the text messages were summarizing to me. As for the fight itself, Danny Garcia landed some nice counter shots, especially early in the fight and especially late. He just didn't do it enough. Another mistake Danny made is you don't follow a puncher around the ring. You cut the ring off and then you go to work. There's a difference. You don't follow him, you cut the ring off. Garcia didn't do that. Thurman, for his efforts, he does too much coasting in fights. And then coasting often turned into running at points in the fight. Keith Thurman isn't this monster in the ring he portrays himself to be. I mean, his knockouts, his KOs for life mantra. Well, when was the last time Keith Thurman had a knockout? And I'm not talking about a guy retiring on his stool after almost dropping Thurman a round earlier. I mean a devastating KO. A KO for life. The answer is it's been a few years. Listen, Keith, because I heard you at the post-fight presser, and I put a little short 3-4 minute video just of the highlights of the post presser. I didn't really look. Thurman did just enough to beat Showtime Shawn Porter in a fight that many, including me, gave to Porter. And against Garcia, he did just enough to beat Danny Garcia. So he's not the dominant force he pounds his chest and calls himself. This wasn't a blowout fight. And now, I mean, the fight started out at a fast pace, and Thurman came out fiery. And in the beginning, the pace was a bit too quick for the slow starting Danny Garcia. But as he settled down, eventually the fight slowed down, and Danny began to find his range and try to get his timing down. And the middle rounds went back and forth. But what bothered me the most about this fight, and what made it disappointing, was the championship rounds. It's almost as if these guys had a silent agreement not to hurt each other and just go ahead and collect their $2 million apiece that they were paid for the fight. I mean, there was no urgency in the championship rounds by either guy. I mean, there was more urgency in the first round. There was no urgency. I mean, Danny didn't change gears at all in the fight to press the action enough. And Thurman, he took it up to fifth gear by running. So you got one guy who just kind of stays stuck in first gear, and then another guy who was already in fifth gear. It just the styles just didn't mesh. This fight it was a disappointment. And when you think about the championship rounds, two undefeated guys, you got one guy who didn't press and another guy who ran. And I'm like, this is when you fight. Everything's on the line right here. The way I see it, Thurman didn't win the fight as much as Danny lost it. I mean, Garcia just didn't show enough urgency. And to be honest, the only reason I suspect Thurman ran in the final rounds is that I think he was tipped off that he was ahead on the cards. I mean, folks, listen, you have a lot of strange characters floating around ringside during the fights, for sure. Ray Leonard, when asked about the similarities of this fight and his first fight with Hearns, he commented, well, the similarities are really similar. Really, dude? Did you say that? Come on, man. Also, for people on Facebook telling those, especially other boxers, that they were blind for scoring the fight even, or for Garcia, let me say this. Especially boxers. I mean, if you want to tell me, that's fine. If you don't have a problem with the official judges, which no one seemed to have, then look at it this way. One judge had it for Thurman. One had it for Garcia. And the deciding scorecard for Thurman was 115-113. So Thurman won the fight by 1 round. I don't have a problem with that score. And I don't think anyone does. So don't act as if anyway. So on both sides. I mean, there were some people walking the halls of the Barclays Center saying Danny got robbed. Those people are delusional. Delusional. And speaking of delusional, let me ask you this. You can comment below, and it's probably the only people that'll comment are probably those who thought it was close or had Danny. There were 2 conspiracies that were going around as I was leaving out. If you think the fight was close, leave a comment to either or both of these conspiracy theories. First one, there were fans saying that the judges were pressured because Danny always wins close decisions, so they were pressured to take one from him this time. Let me know if you buy that or not. Second conspiracy was that the commission reinstated Angel Garcia's license so that they could hand him and his son their first loss as a punishment for his actions at the original press conference. You guys buying any of this? Let me know. Let me know. You know, there was something else I had to... something else I had to say, and I slipped my mind. Should have wrote it down. Oh boy, it was a key point. Gosh. Well, if I remember it, I'll remember it. But anyway, a couple more things. I kept hearing them draw comparisons to... I'm hearing this from people who watched it on television, drawing comparisons to the fight between Leonard Hearns, the first one. I mean, this, no way. No way. Not only did those guys fight 15 rounds, but there was action. So, once again, it's just trying to make more of something than it's not. There is no comparison at all. If you want to call a unification, okay, whatever. They don't make them like they used to. I mean, in the final rounds, it's one guy who's like, I'm not going to go on the attack because it's almost as if I don't want to get caught with anything. And then Keith Thurman, who just goes into these survival modes, like let me just be safe and preserve. And I understand it kind of happened after the Soto Carras fight where he got stunned a couple of times and he changed up a little bit. I don't know. I expect a better showing with Kell Brook and Errol Spence Jr. for sure. And I wish I could remember what I was trying to remember, but let me close with this. Lastly, in closing, I got 2 t-shirts from the event. I'll leave a little 20-second video or something like right after this probably should have just taken a picture of the t-shirts, but oh well. One of them is an extra large, or 1X. There's a difference. And the other is a 2X. And the 2X looks like it's cut big. It could maybe even pass for a 3X or a 2.5X if there was such a thing. So, the first 2 people who email me will get the shirt. Now, if someone grabs the 2X and the second person wants the 2X, too bad. I'll send you the 1X if you still want it, or vice versa. So, first 2 emails I get can have them. But here's the hard part. What's my email? Well, it's easily available, and I'll give you a hint. I am the owner and editor of thefightjournal.com. Alright? So it should be easy from there if you go where you need to go. And I'll add an additional small prize in there for whoever gets the shirts. And no, this is not one of the 5 or 6 contests that I've been talking about that we're going to have this year. They're coming soon. You snooze, you lose. So be ready. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.